You're listening to
They're gonna call it a hard foul. They're gonna call it a hard foul.
offering in-depth analysis on all things Boston Celtics with your hosts, Jim and Mike Quigley.
Mike, this break has been so long between the conference finals and the finals that we have to do another kind of NBA Finals preview pod because what else?
Yeah, man, it's Christmas Eve. It's Christmas Eve. Santa's coming.
You know, the killer on this too is tip-off is scheduled for 8:30, but it's an ESPN game, so it's going to probably be 8:45. You know, so like, you're going to have to wait the wait, even when it finally feels like it's there. There's been obviously a ton of talk over the last 8 days. A lot of it has been ridiculous, centered around Tatum and Brown, and you know, whether Tatum was happy, whether Brown won the Eastern Conference Finals MVP. We can get to all that kind of weirdo nonsense at the end of the pod. Let's get right into the basketball. And the big news, Mike, from this week is Kristaps Porzingis, you know, is all but declared ready to go. I guess he is declared ready to go, right? I mean, barring a setback.
Yeah, I just saw a tweet that basically said he did a full hard practice and he's good to go for Thursday.
Yeah, and then Shams Kamaria kind of announced that last night. What are your thoughts, just in terms of his presence in this series in particular? What it means for the Celtics? What does it mean for the Mavericks?
I want to see the drive down the lane, the alley-oop, one-handed dunk, where he's like, you know, full foot over the rim, and I'll know he's healthy. And on the defensive end, just coming out of nowhere to block a shot. I think that'll help us know whether he's there or not. You know, that explosion that he has for a guy who's his size, and it kind of looks awkward when he does it, but it's still awesome at the same time. If he's healthy, it's so different. It's so different. I think one of the storylines will be how are the refs calling the game if he's healthy, because if they're calling it like it was being called in the first round, he could have a tough time where teams are allowed to foul him on the shot and not get called for it like they did in the regular season.
Yeah.
So it puts pressure on the refs, which is always a good thing, because he'll get some of those calls eventually just because of the complaining that'll happen. And, you know, he makes such a difference for Tatum and Brown if he's 100%, because he can give you post play. He can obviously hit the top of the key three. You know, hopefully they got rid of putting him in the corner. Down the stretch of the season, they were putting Porzingis in the corner a lot. Maybe they were just trying to give him extra rest to get ready for the playoffs, but I thought we saw some of that against Miami. He doesn't belong there. He's not an effective shooter from there. Top of the key, foul line extended, post-ups. Let's get that offense back. If Dallas goes zone, Porzingis should be able to crush it. Now, if he's only 70%, Jim, then I don't know what he really offers, and Al should probably be playing more.
Yeah.
So we'll see quickly. One thing I do not want to happen is his really long layoff impacting this game in a negative way, where if he's not ready to go tonight, that's okay. Don't force him. You know, let him get his legs under him. But if he's not ready to go, get your other guys in there and try to, you know, take this first game at home. One of my concerns was him not getting in there in the previous series to get any run, is that he'd be so much time off that even at 100%, he'd be just not himself, cold, rusty, and hurt this team.
Yeah.
So they have to figure out a way, if that's how he's playing, they can't let that affect the final outcome.
I don't know how you could have managed that properly, because the Celtics.
No, you can't.
The Celtics
have
the Celtics have had a long layoff, like a tremendously long layoff. So even if he played 20 minutes, would have made a difference. I mean, they all got to kind of get their legs under them to some extent. 10 days.
Yeah, Dallas too.
Yeah. So, look, I think it's just a matter of whether he's healthy or not. They go into the practices, they're getting him ready to go. I think it does. It impacts the game on both ends tremendously. One, you know, his ability to stretch the floor against Dallas is really, really important. His release on the three is so much quicker than Al Horford's that you almost have to draw the big out even more, or whoever's covering him even more. Al Horford, it's not a slow release, but it's a lot more deliberate than Porzingis. And Porzingis has obviously got that higher release, and he stretches the floor even deeper. If you look at most of Porzingis' threes, they're about a foot behind the line. Mm-hmm. So that ability to do that against Dallas is really important. And going back and watching the game against the Celtics, the one thing that stood out is obviously Dallas's rotations are different now, but their strategy on defense is not. They overload and want to take away the rim, and they will give up the three. And
that's not a good strategy against Boston.
No. So something's got to give here and if you look through the first 3 rounds, it's exactly how they've played. And, but the difference is you've been able to play off PJ Tucker. You've been able to play off Josh Giddey. Karl-Anthony Towns wasn't making anything in Minnesota. So you were able to let these teams kind of fire away, and it did not hurt you. It did not hurt you. And against the Celtics, if Porzingis is playing, you have 4 guys that can initiate the offense, and then a 5th guy that, is just a different type of force at 7-3 than you're used to seeing. And, the Chet Holmgren, they let shoot all day long. He shot 25% from 3, was really ineffective. I just think there's a different level at this points of their career between Holmgren and Porzingis. And I don't think you can treat Porzingis that way. Unless, as you said, the injury has just impacted him, and you can see that early on, and that changes things. It changes things for the Celtics, too, because Joe Mazzulla now has 6 guys he can trust. And he knows between every game in the finals, he's going to have 2 or 3 days off. So he can just play 6 if he wants to. He really can. I mean, if he goes to Porzingis, if he goes to Hauser or Pritchard, and he just sees them getting targeted by Luka, he can just go back to the 6. And he doesn't have to worry about minutes and things like that if Porzingis is really ready to go. So it just makes a huge difference. And then on the other end, the defensive end, what the Celtics have done to Dallas, and I wonder if they change this or show something different and then go back to this, but they have played Porzingis or Al, whoever their big is, or Rob Williams, on essentially your Derek Jones Jr. And they've had Tatum play the center. And what that does is, so when Luka drives on the pick and roll, and let's say, it's Tatum covering Lively or Gafford, you essentially now play that 3-on-3 instead of 2-on-2. Because you will now have Porzingis down in that area. You'll have Tatum, obviously on Lively covering that, and then whoever's on the ball against Luka. So you increase your odds. It doesn't mean Luka's not going to find the man. Maybe he finds the guy in the corner that Porzingis is covering. Maybe he still gets a oop, but it increases the Celtics' odds of defending that. And they've had a lot of success doing that. Now, last game, Lively went 7 for 7, but there were limited opportunities. He didn't get more than 7. So I kind of see, I don't think you're able to do that as effectively with Al, but Porzingis' length and size of being able to kind of help on the oop. And then if the ball's kicked to the corner, just having that length to, bother the shot a little bit is a bigger, makes, is much more impactful than what Al can do at this point. So I think he's huge on both ends if these teams continue to attack the way they have. And Mike, particularly in offense, I want to hear from you on this. Dallas plays a really similar defensive scheme that Miami does. And Miami really gambled on a lot of luck last year, and it worked out for them, that the Celtics were going to miss a lot of threes. And they did. Dallas is essentially overloads the side. They want to force you to the rim. They have really good rim protectors. And they've given up a shitload of threes, or are willing to give up a shitload of threes. How do the Celtics attack that? Or do the Celtics have to do anything different in your opinion, or just play their offense and understanding that maybe the odds will they get enough talent where they will make these shots? How do you attack that in your estimation?
I think you have to continue. I think the Celtics still have to run their offense, and they have to play aggressive. They have to stay aggressive. They have to still attack the paint, even if Dallas is defending it and trying to take it away. As many paint touches as we can, because it's one thing to have an open three, say early in the shot clock, where it's way different in the NBA to get an open three later on the shot clock with good ball rhythm, good ball movement and rhythm in your offense. Those shots tend to go in more than an open three early in the shot clock to maybe, your least option of your 3-point shooters. And I think the Celtics got caught up in that a lot with Miami last year, where it would be like a Grant Williams taking a three early in the shot clock because he was open in the corner, where maybe if he let the shooter come to him and he drove and kicked, we could have got it to Derek White or a Marcus Smart last year, or Jason Tatum to get more looks. I feel like the Celtics rush because of the physicality of Miami. So even though it looked like good looks, they could have got even better looks if they stayed within the offense. And then you have to be strong with the ball. If Dallas plays like Miami does, as you're saying, and they're taking away that paint, that means there's a physicality to God in their yard. And that's really important, probably to their philosophy. You see it with Luka. He bumps a lot with his body. I said it on the last pod. I don't think you're going to get a lot of those calls because the NBA isn't interested in getting Luka and Kyrie in foul trouble. So they're going to allow, even Derek Jones and PJ Washington to push, and you're going to have to not turn the ball over. So I think you stay within your offense and you attack that paint. I don't care what kind of defense anybody is playing against Boston. When they get paint touches and they're attacking the paint, they either finish at the rim no matter what the defense is because they just continue to be tenacious in attack, or they're getting good looks within the rhythm of the offense.
Yeah.
Does that make sense what I'm saying?
It does. And I think it continues to drive and kick. I think you're absolutely right. Don't settle for that early three, although I would not be opposed to early on in the game if Porzingis is feeling it to stretch them out.
Oh, yeah.
So so an early three there, I'm not opposed to that at all. He needs to make them. That's the thing. But that would be the only exception to what you're saying. I completely agree. And I think find the mismatch, and I think a lot of that's going to be Kyrie. And people are right. Kyrie's defended well. He defends better than most guards his size. He has not had to really switch on to guys like Tatum and Brown in the playoffs. And two guys that are comfortable in the post. That is not Anthony Edwards' game right now. Anthony Edwards is more face up, beat you off the dribble, either go to the hoop or pull up. These two guys have worked a ton on the post. And I think
well, not in this postseason though, Jim. That's one thing that, you bring up a good point from the regular season. We haven't seen that in the postseason. I would like to see that in the series.
Yeah, I thought Tatum did a lot more of that in Indiana, especially in Indiana. And I think with Brown, he didn't really have to because Tatum was getting all the attention that he was getting just matchups throughout this entire playoffs where he wouldn't have to go to the post. I mean, I know a lot of the talk has been about how Brown has had the better playoffs, but it's set up for him that way, right? If you have Tatum getting the majority of the pick and rolls, and then the ball rotates to Brown, and he's getting the looks, that's excellent. And that's not to take anything away from Brown. I mean, he's executing, he's killing teams, he's been excellent. But it's because of the defense that Tatum's getting. And that's the way you want it. You wouldn't want the majority of the pick and rolls to start with Brown, right? Because you're probably going to lead to some turnovers, and he's just not as skilled as Tatum in those situations. I think the key for the Celtics, and I think you were pretty much alluding on to this, is you can't get bogged down, too. You can't all of a sudden, start, Dallas starts switching, they change up their defense a little bit, and you stop running your offense, you stop moving the ball, you go into your mismatches late, and you kind of get into that isolation hero ball, and Tatum takes a much tougher shot than he has to. That's the type of stuff that will feed right into Dallas. Because that will lead to the long rebounds, that will lead to them running. And they've been probably the best transition, which is kind of crazy because Luka used to play so slow. They've become one of the best transition teams in all the playoffs. And they were a good transition team all season. Fortunately, the Celtics are the best transition defense in the NBA. And, I think that part of that is they have their centers playing out and shooting threes so they get back. I think that's part of the math that Joe Mazzulla thinks about. It's just not about firing off threes. It's, it's in one area where the Celtics are similar to the 2008 era Garnett Celtics, is they get back as good as anyone. So one of the keys to this game is, can you continue to stop transition? And can Dallas play faster than you and get hoops? And that's going to be a huge, huge key, because if Dallas is able to get easy ones, it changes everything. It changes everything in this series. So to me, that's one of the kind of untalked about keys. What does Dallas do, Mike? I want to ask you. So the Celtics, they play their offense at getting good shots, because Dallas is overloading. So how do they switch this? Do they become more switching? I think it becomes more of a lively series at that point. Do we see Max Kleber out there, who's a better on-ball defender than, some of their other guys and more switchable? What do you think happens?
What Dallas does on the defensive end?
Yeah, what do they do to kind of...
If the Celtics are firing off their threes and hitting everything and getting good looks and switches on, where I would throw zone at the Celtics. I would really take a look at a lot of Eric Spoelstra's game plans. And that's what I would be doing. I'd be watching a lot of that tape as my ways to adjust and what zones he played against Boston in the past, what defenses you can mix in there. And I agree with you on the lively thing, but also unleashing Gafford and allowing him to play free a little bit. If Al and Porzingis aren't hitting their threes, I would allow him to play free a little bit. But I mean, the matchups are going to be tough. I think it really comes down to. I think it comes down to maybe adjustments with double teams. I don't know. The Celtics are tricky. Maybe your offense is what protects your defense. And Dallas's game plan in those moments are, we really have to lean on Luka. We have to lean on him quite a bit here to make every decision for us on offense right now to keep us in this thing. And so if we continue to score, it gives our defense a chance to make stops, because the Celtics can't get out in transition. They have to run their sets. We can pick up full court and speed them up a little bit. That's something you can do too. You brought up Kleber. I'd use Hardy. He's a physical player. He brings a lot of energy. So doesn't Josh Green. And I would pick up the guards full court. And try to speed up Holiday, try to speed up Derek White, try to speed up Jaylen Brown into mistakes. I think if the Celtics are efficient on offense, I would not give them similar looks over and over again defensively. I would be switching up a lot and almost coaching this like a college game, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think probably switching is right. I think that's what I think you would have to do. And I think Lively becomes a big part of that. Like Lively, in a lot of ways, he's more skilled. But defensively, he has a lot of similarities to Rob Williams when I watch him. He looks like he can fly around everywhere. And I think he can switch on to certain guys. I don't think he can switch on to everybody. But he's pretty disciplined, and he bounces around, and he's just such an impactful player on that end that I wonder if you can switch a little bit Dallas 1 through 4 and have him kind of, play block to corner. That will, hamper the Celtics offense at all. because I don't think Gafford could do that. I think he's a great defensive rebounder, a great offensive rebounder, blocking shots. But I don't think he's that type of player that can go block to corner and be effective. The question then becomes if they're switching everything, and switching has hurt the Celtics. If teams are actually able to do it during the season, it shouldn't as much, but it has. Can the Celtics, continue to break down different defenders and find the matchups, find Kyrie, for example, or find Luka in space if they're switching and take advantage of that and, not get bogged down. Not get bogged down, run pick and rolls with decoys, things like that. And I wonder if we see some of that earlier than, we think.
And my thing too,
because the overloading seems like you're playing with fire against the Celtics, the way the Dallas has been playing defense.
And with Dallas, obviously you want to protect Luka and Kyrie. My game plan is everybody else's fair game to get in foul trouble because my bench is so deep if I'm Jason Kidd. I'm not even playing Tim Hardaway Jr. right now. Matt, you bring up Max Kleber. He hasn't really touched the floor.
Yeah.
So those are good NBA players. And I look at it as if Derrick Jones Jr. and P.J. Washington and Gafford are in foul trouble because I'm playing extremely physical defensively and I'm taking the Celtics out of their rhythm, I'm willing to be in the bonus. I'm willing to let the Celtics go to the free throw line and play this kind of game, this ugly kind of game, because the pace of the game is going to be slow and I can allow Luka to try to take over. So if the Celtics are in a rhythm, I'm going to try to make it as ugly as possible.
But that's not how Dallas plays. So I understand what you're saying. Dallas plays fast. They don't play slow. They play fast. And when they played slow, they sucked. So when they've gotten the ball offensively, if Luka no longer just dribbles the ball down the court, he gets a rebound and he's getting it out. He's looking up the floor, and they just move. They don't look to bog down the game. And so let's switch to the offensive side. When Dallas has the ball, I think the number one key for the Celtics is limit transition opportunities. And number two is defensive rebound. To me, those are like, you can't lose in those areas because that's what's going to, give Dallas real opportunities to beat you. You got to limit those 1 and 2. And then after that, it really becomes, as much of anything, is how you decide to handle Luka. And what Oklahoma City did is they really went all out to stop Luka and Kyrie, and Dallas's role players really stepped up. Minnesota didn't do that as much and tried to guard their yard, and Luka killed them. And what do the Celtics do? I imagine they're going to try to guard their yard, but I think if they do that, Luka's just going to look for switches on the Holiday and White. And that becomes a real huge advantage for Luka. The other thing Luka's been great at, and the Mavs been great at, is finding those corner threes. The Celtics have been, if not the best, one of the best teams in the league in defending the corner three. But I sometimes wonder with a number like that, is that just kind of luck with the other team missing against you all season? Or are you really that good at defending it? I think since it's over a course of 82, you would think they're really that good at defending it. Then the shot that the Celtics have gotten beat on, and they've kind of allowed for it all year, is that foul line extended above the break three. So you have to, whenever you play a guy like Luka, you just have to accept he's going to beat you, even against great defense sometimes. And you almost have to give something up. You really do. You have to give something up because he's just so good and so smart. So what is the Celtics' approach, I guess I ask to you? Is it double teaming? Is it playing straight up and living with Luka results? Do you feel like you're just better than Oklahoma City, where you can play him straight up? You don't have to overload on Kyrie and Luka? What do you do defensively in this series?
I would play a little off Derek Jones Jr. and see if he's going to hit those threes. That would be part of my strategy early on in games to get that help there. So you could have Tatum actually helping off of that matchup. Or as you mentioned earlier, if they put Porzingis on him and Tatum's covering the big, and that's the help that Jaylen Brown is getting. And if they're switching on the smaller guards, then you may want to reconsider your game plan and adjust from there. But early on, that would be my strategy. And if Luka gets hot, you may have to throw double teams at him and, hope these other guys can't beat you. But yeah, I would start with Jaylen Brown. I would pick him up as soon as he crosses half court, try to make it as difficult as possible so shots are really late into the shot clock. And my help would be coming off of Derek Jones Jr. early on to start that game, and hopefully somebody's taking away the alley-oop Gafford.
Yeah, and let's say Porzingis is starting on Derek Jones. Do you ever consider putting Derek Jones in the screen action? In the
what action?
So Dallas has been consistent where their bigs have been the screener when they've gone to the pick.
So if you're Dallas, you consider that?
Yeah, would you put...
Not right away. I would trust Derek Jones the way I have if I'm Dallas to hit that shot. If he's not, then you have to consider making changes. Yeah, of course. But if he comes out hitting that shot, I'm not putting him in the screener. But if he's not doing anything with that opportunity, I'm either putting somebody else in the game or I would consider making him the screener in that action. Yeah.
Yeah. And the one thing I would do is, I would try to do that with Kyrie is if Porzingis is covering Jones and see if I can get Porzingis in the drop. That's where I think Kyrie could be real effective. I would not switch that if I was the Celtics. You should be able to get around a Derek Jones screen if you're Holiday or White, right? Or Brown or Tatum.
Yeah.
To stay in front of Kyrie. So I kind of look at that too with the Kyrie matchup. I think he can get middle on the pick and roll against anybody in the league. Certainly the Celtics and with Porzingis dropping, and you're going to have to find a way to fight over that. But I think for the most part, the Celtics can handle that matchup. If you look at their four guards and wings, Kyrie will have an advantage over Tatum because of his speed, but it's not a huge one. I think Brown, White, and Holiday are all fine on him. It doesn't mean Irving won't get some. But it doesn't he doesn't put fear into me, I guess, in the same way or even close to the same way that Luka does with these matchups. I just I close my eyes and I just picture Luka hunting Derek White. And as good as Derek White is defensively, Luka's, as you've said a million times, he's just huge. And I don't know how...
He's huge and he's good with his body. He knows how to make contact. He's just good. I mean, he uses your body against you sometimes and gets the and one on jump shots. He's so strong. I'd be interested to see what that's going to look like. Can Holiday even handle that matchup? I've never really seen him on Luka.
Luka's gotten the best of Holiday. In the last matchup especially, he got the best of Holiday over and over again. Yeah.
Is there a player in the NBA that has had success against this guy? I don't know, Jim. I think you said it earlier on the pod. If the key of the Celtics winning isn't shutting him down. I don't think you can.
Jaylen
did Luka take 30? Did Luka take 30 shots because his teammates couldn't hit him?
Jaylen Brown did all right against him. I'm sorry, you finish your thought, then I'll.
No, go ahead. Yeah, so Brown did all right against him.
Brown did all right against him, but they do a good job of getting Brown off him and attacking them. The other mismatches. So, if this was just a mano for mano game, Luka would still get it. Would still have a lot of moments against Jaylen Brown. Don't anyone take this the wrong way, but I think it's much easier to force Luka into a 12 for 30 or 13 for 32 type night with a guy like Brown in front of him. Luke is just so good at saying, okay, well, you're going to switch. I know exactly what you do defensively. I know exactly how you're going to throw it at me. And if you change things up by the end of the game, I'm going to be prepared for that. And I'm going to be able to fake you with however I'm going to do that to put you in a bad spot. That he really becomes just such a difficult piece to guard. But he is, to that same extent, one guy.
Yeah.
And so do you live with it? Do you live with it in some ways of, we'll be okay if he averages 37 a game. We can't have, that's how we used to handle Giannis. That's how we used to handle Embiid or whatever. Let them take as many as they want, but we got to limit everyone else. And the Celtics are uniquely built. The NBA historically, and you're hearing a lot of this, and the reason why a lot of people are picking the Mavs, best player wins the title, right?
Mm-hmm.
Generational player wins the title. The Celtics have been built to withstand going through, and this year they haven't had to, but going through guys like Embiid, going through guys like Giannis, and not having the best player in the series. That's how the Celtics are built right now. And I guess this is going to test it as much as anything, this series, if that's really the way to go.
Yeah, and also, there's a chance that Luka isn't the best player in the series. There's a chance that Jason Tatum is. So I'm interested to see that too. Tatum's been taking a lot of heat for a long time.
Glad you brought it up. Yeah.
A lot of ridiculous takes about him and the type of player that he is. So let's see. Let's roll the balls out there on Thursday and let's get this thing started, because I think Luke is better, but is there a huge gap? Because if you think there's a huge gap between Luka and Tatum, you haven't been watching. You haven't been watching this kid play since he came into the league. Tatum is one of the top 5 players in the NBA. I think it's ridiculous that people are saying that he isn't. And it's ridiculous that people are saying that SGA is better than him, or that Joel Embiid is better than him. The proof is in the results, people. It's in the results. He's in his second. He's led his team to the NBA Finals for the second time in 3 years.
I'm glad you brought this up.
They would have went. This would have been their 3rd time in a row, Jim. They would have been the first team in NBA history to come back from 3-0 last year if he didn't get hurt.
Yeah.
So let's see what happens. I think that Luka is, like I said in the last pod, the best player in the league right now. Absolutely. But is he really that much better than Tatum? Because there's an opportunity here that I think we're going to see that it's pretty close. I don't think Dallas has a lot of guys that match up with Tatum and Brown. Jason Tatum could average 30 points a game in this series. He could be efficient doing it. He's a great passer. They're going to have to adjust to his game when he's torching these guys, which means these great shooters are going to be open. And we saw against Indiana the type of passer Tatum is in clutch moments. One of the best in the NBA. He's up there. Yes, Luka is better. Jokic are better passers. Is Tatum really that far off?
Oh, I think from them,
If Jason Tatum played on the Oklahoma City Thunder and SGA played on the Boston Celtics would not be in the NBA Finals right now. If Jason Tatum played on the Oklahoma City Thunder, there's a chance they win that series against Dallas. I think that we're going to see the MVP of the NBA Finals playing on the Boston Celtics, and he's going to outplay Luka in the series. That's what I think is going to happen. I'm really looking forward to it.
I agree with a lot of that. I don't know if I am on board with the SGA and Tatum piece. I think they're both great players. So I'm not sure the Celtics out here if it was SGA, but
they're not.
So let me ask you something. So the Celtics have been here 6 of 8 times, right? Well, they've been to the conference finals, 6 of 8 finals last 2 or 3 years. I think the first 3 appearances to the conference finals was a team that really just wasn't ready. You looked at, it was that lost Kyrie. You had an Isaiah Thomas team there as one of those teams. And then you had the bubble team coming the year after Kyrie, Hayward, and Horford, Well, I guess Hayward was still on the team, but Horford and Kyrie had left. But the last 3 years, obviously they deserve some level of criticism for losing to Golden State. I don't think as much as they get. Golden State was a veteran team. An all-time player was playing at an all-time level, and Steph Curry, probably the best finals he ever had. And then last year, obviously, they deserve all the criticism thrown their way. Their stars didn't step up, and they came up short and put themselves in a stupid hole that they should never been in. But if let's say the first 3 seasons hadn't happened the way that they had in these guys' career, and they're not getting to the conference finals, and they're kind of building up to this moment, and it was just 2 of 3 finals appearances, and they lost the first one, do you think they're looked at the same way as, like,
I don't know, probably not.
Are they more looked at as just being on schedule right now?
Yeah, I guess. You're probably right. But I still think it's ridiculous. I think it's ridiculous. You mentioned a stat the other day, which is a pretty great stat for the NBA, and also, like, wow, a team that has won the NBA Finals hasn't made it out of the second round since Golden State.
Yeah, it's unreal.
Do you realize there's only been one team that's made it to the NBA Finals that made it past the second round in that stretch too? And it's been the Boston Celtics when they went to the Eastern Conference Finals last year.
Yeah.
So if you look at all the losers of the NBA Finals, they haven't made it past the second round either. So there has been a model of consistency here. And I don't want to sound like a green teamer, and you can make fun of me all you want, but there have been injuries that have impacted the Celtics in these moments. Outside of Golden State, but even with Golden State, Rob Williams wasn't himself.
Yeah.
He wasn't even close. And if you actually paid attention to that team and had the narrative of that team that season, there were talks on this podcast that he was the most important player on that team because he's the one that turned that season around when they were still in that funk of 500 basketball. And then they moved Josh Richardson out and Dennis Schroeder, and that team was turned it around.
He was
doing incredible things.
Yeah, he was Derek Lively. Yeah.
The criticism I give to that team is to Jason Tatum because he got outplayed by friggin' Andrew Wiggins. But overall, like the criticism to me, whatever, it's I mean, even if they win this championship, they're already talking about it, Jim. They're already saying, like, oh, they had the easiest path, and that you can't really compare them against other teams. I don't care about the historical numbers. They do not matter. This team couldn't beat the 08 Celtics. They couldn't beat, the Cleveland Cavaliers or the Miami Heat LeBron James teams. Like, there's just going to be this crazy narrative no matter what happens. So I just want to see Jason Tatum dominate the series. That's what I want to see. That would make me happy.
Well, I think from a national narrative, there's several things just working against him. I think what I talked about a second ago, I think that what you just brought up in the parody, that's the intention of the NBA right now, especially with the new CBA. The Celtics kind of are like pushing up against that pretty heavily. And and if they win it this year, and they will be the favorites next year, it really is deliberately pushing back against that pretty hard. And then from people's just historical, standpoint from the NBA is you should have all-time great player. If you're going to have an all-time great team, you should have a generational player. And Tatum is excellent. I don't think anyone's really put him in that generational category quite yet. Maybe he gets there, but he's probably not there yet. And I think that bothers people. I think it bothers people because they're used to LeBron James, Jokic last year, Luka this year, Steph Curry. And those are the guys they used to being their champions. And this really breaks the trend of that quite a bit.
Well, what does he have to do to be? What does he have to do to be a generational talent? Just win the series? Because I mean, what like he's in the conversation. He's as good as these guys. So if we're saying that Luke is a generational talent, which he is, so isn't Tatum. He's a 6'8" forward who has handles almost as good as Kyrie. He passes the ball at like a point guard. gets to the hole when he wants to. He's taken over big moments where he's had a 50-point game in a game 7.
There's a difference. There's a difference between him and Luka. I think.
Well, let's see. Let's see in this NBA Finals. Let's see, because Luka doesn't defend like Tatum.
No, that's true.
Can't do that Tatum can do on defensive end. Luka can't do that. There's things on the offensive end that Tatum does that Luka can't do, and I'm interested to watch. I want to see it because I know Luka's going to get his numbers, but at the end of the day, let's see. Let's see what happens in this series because I'm kind of sick of the talk, and I think Tatum is in the conversation.
And to your point,
I do. And
to your point, by the time the series is over, he's going to be the all-time leading scorer in the playoffs for someone 26 and under. He's going to pass Kobe in that department. But maybe it doesn't matter unless he gets a ring. Maybe no one's going to really see it that way.
And
a ring. Yeah.
And give Tatum Shaquille O'Neal. Okay, give Tatum Shaquille O'Neal.
Tatum, you can say that, but this Celtics roster, they are the favorites, and with good reason. If they don't win this year, I think you can look at this.
That's a huge disappointment.
Yeah, this would be a failure now. The way this,
but they're not losing, Jim.
I don't think so either.
Series. They're not. They're just not going to. The pundits picking against them they just hate Boston. That's what it comes down to. They don't like Boston. They never it happens all the time. It is what it is. The Celtics have a long history of dominating.
Well, just the city of Boston too. They don't like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, they're blinded by that, and they really want Dallas to win. Dallas is like America's team right now. I don't care. The Celtics are winning this series, and they're going to be the NBA champions. Whether it's 4 games or 6, I think it's going 6 or 7. You think it's going 5?
5 or 6. Yeah.
The Celtics are winning this
thing. This is a talking point I think have grown sick of, and rightfully so. But I just want to hit on the Kyrie stuff one last time.
Can I bitch about that for a second too?
Go for it.
This guy, I'm all about it. You brought up a great point in the pod. Second chances. This is America. This is great. It is a good story. Good for him. He's playing. I mean, I told you on the last pod, I think he's going to play good in Boston. I still feel that way. However, you go on this guy's Wikipedia page, it'll be a reminder of every team that he was on going back to Cleveland that he kind of blew up on his way out the door.
Yeah.
So we're just gonna forget that. We're just gonna, and again, Kendrick Perkins saying, "Oh, you can't boo this guy." Yes, you can.
Yeah.
You have every right to boo him. What's that about?
And everyone that says you owe this man an apology now. What? He owes everyone else an apology. And that's the part that drives. If he's really grown as a person, it isn't about everyone else. It becomes about him. And his interview the other day, it was so vintage fucking Kyrie, where it was the whole story will come out probably after I retire. And what that does is like such in a passive aggressive way that this wasn't really my fault.
Yeah, he's such.
This wasn't my fault. My grandmother died, and look, I will never push back against someone's grief and what they go through, and like if that was really going on. But what he implies is that the Celtics and everyone else weren't there enough for him during that time. That's what he implies. And I guarantee you, they bent over backwards to kiss his ass and do everything they could for him. And but somehow him talking to Kevin Durant at the All-Star game and forming that super team then, or quitting in the Milwaukee series and just not playing defense and getting out of the scheme, that was because Kyrie wasn't pampered enough. Like, if you're going to say that, speak on it. If you're going to say that, speak on it. Otherwise, take accountability. And I know he kind of has in the past, but what he does is he will say, I've changed, I've learned from my mistakes. And then he'll say something like this. And so you're not really being accountable. And none of this would bother me if he just said, look, I'm not talking about Boston. That's in the past. That's something I learned from. I'm here to focus. But he couldn't. He had to say, maybe the full story will come out when I retire. And guys, that's it for the pod. Basically, we lost Wi-Fi there at the end. Rant was that Kyrie's not accountable. And that's it. So everyone, good luck. Celtics, we'll talk to you after game 1.